Holy cow, lots of new and exciting things happening. Some are great, some not so much. Let's check it out. Haven and I got a call saying that propane tank was being delivered a day and a half early. So she's my videographer, obviously, and we grabbed all of her homeschool stuff and we ran up to the RV. The issue was I've driven big vehicles before, 26 feet towing a car. However, I've never driven this RV and it's 31 feet long, and I did not want my maiden voyage to be backing it out of this yard and then back in again. However, that's how it went down today. The guy from the propane company they've been so great, and he was so awesome. So he helped back me out. Really, you're basically going fairly straight and trying not to drive over people's lawns. Backing it out went pretty easily. He had to get the truck and the crane in to the yard in order to put the propane tank in. First, I got it all backed out and done, and that went pretty well. I was feeling just super duper proud of myself. Look at me, yay, I did this, it's so great. And then he backed his truck in. It's really great when the leveling system on the propane truck is far better than yours. And also they have a crane. I was kind of jealous of that. It was really easy, straightforward, cut and dry to get the propane tank in. He put it on some concrete blocks that they carry with them specifically for this. He looked at the yard ahead of time and knew exactly where he'd put it and how he would run the line. He was so awesome. And then I brought the RV back in. I actually feel like it was pulled a little bit too close to the house on the way back in. However, we haven't leveled it yet. And so I know we're going to be doing some backward and forward with that. It's really a very easy rig to drive. It's a Ford E450. I've driven that truck lots of times. This is just big, and I wanted to do it super well. We did have an issue with propane leaking inside of the RV with no idea where it was coming from. And I knew that when he came and hooked up the propane, he would help. We actually found 2 leaks, both with the new installs. We had a stovetop and a hot water heater both installed during the renovation. Both of them had connections that were loose. Even after we got the leaks taken care of that we knew about, there's still leaks inside. So for now, the propane is not connected. We have a mobile RV maintenance repair person coming out in the next 2 weeks to fix the propane links within the RV. I did remember to grab the curtains and brought them up. I hemmed them and they fit perfectly. Here's what happened with the electrician. Our son's house has 100 amp service, which is pretty common in an older home. Running a new line for 30 amp RV service kind of maxes that out. We shouldn't have too much of a problem with that though, because we're already running the RV when we're actually living in it full time, and we've got everything running and it maxes out that 30 amps of electricity. It could overload the system in the house. To put the 30 amp plug in, no big deal, right? You add a breaker and you run the wire. The way the house was designed, there's no crawl space. It's on a concrete foundation. Great. There is ducting in the ceiling, but there's not an attic. So we would have to cut a hole in the wall, run wire through the ceiling across half of the house, pop it outside. That is a massive pain in the butt. And it just takes time. So you're paying $70 an hour for somebody to struggle with wires being run through a ceiling where they don't know where beams are and stuff like that. When you pop it out of the exterior of the house, you run it along the beam. Let's say you wanted to do that. You wanted to run that. You want to take the time, the effort, and the money to run that 30 amp. It doesn't make sense to put the 30 amp separate breaker on. Right now, it's a 30 amp with a power surger and converter. I'm not an electrician, and maybe I'm getting some of this wrong. But the bottom line is, The house only offers so much power. So in my mind, there's no point in putting a 30 amp plug, even if it was super easy and we didn't have to put holes in the ceiling. Maybe it can handle the power on the plug we're using right now, because we've never lived in it using all of the power. I'm not really excited about math right now. Let's wrap up the electrical and propane. I have to say, I did not think that this entire video would be just for those two things. However, a video that's 10 minutes for you to watch took over 3 weeks to create. There is a theme in RV life. Something comes up, you've never dealt with it before, you have this learning curve, and it's stressful because when you're talking about electrical and propane, especially, those are two really significant issues in using and living in an RV. So not something small like which polyurethane should you use for your countertop. These are big things. It controls all the power, heat, the hot water, and the cooking. Just a couple small things. Something comes up in an RV, you have to learn about it and figure out what to do. And you're stressed and overwhelmed, then you figure out who you need to call and how you need help, and you schedule it and you wait a week or two. We contacted the electrician and he was scheduled 2 weeks later. We contacted the RV maintenance. He was scheduled 2 weeks later. We contacted the propane tank delivery. That took about 3 weeks to get there. Everything takes a little bit of time, which isn't a big deal. What the issue is, in my mind anyway, is that there's a certain matter of stress while you're waiting for that to happen, where you feel uncertain and unsure. It's been 9.5 months since we bought the RV. So at this point, that's just become part of the course in renovating and moving into an RV. The great news is, with every situation, I have learned so much. It will be so much easier moving forward in this RV, as well as renovating subsequent RVs. The amount I've learned and the amazing people I've met have been incredible. Let's wrap up the electrical. Basically, the electrician said, your setup is great. It looks good. And if it's working, you can keep it this way. You may never have a problem. It's very close. The load of the RV and the amps in the house, it's close. You may trip the breaker. But 30 amp on a separate breaker is more ideal. The plug we have the RV on currently, it is on its own breaker. So that part's good. It's set up well. We have the converter and the surge protector. There's nothing wrong with it. It could be more ideal. Because we're not planning on living in this location really long term, and because it's difficult to install the 30 amp, he recommended we move in, give it a shot, see if the breaker gets tripped, and learn what's creating the problem. I also took the refrigerator off electric and put it onto the propane. So another thing is minimizing the electricity that you're using, or staggering it in the day so you're not using everything all at once. We're also considering looking into a propane oven instead of the electric microwave convection oven. That is a big electrical draw, and it would eliminate that completely. Propane wrap up. The mobile RV maintenance team came out yesterday. I keep saying this, but they were awesome. I've really met the most incredible people. Not only that, every single time I meet somebody and engage with them, I learn a tremendous amount. Here's the thing. When the propane tank was getting delivered, it was easy to find very obvious leaks where basically the connection wasn't tightened all the way down. We found one on the hot water heater, and there is only one connection, so we tightened it down. We found one on the stovetop. Basically, you move the microwave convection oven out of the way and everything's exposed, so it's easy to see the connection. There was still a leak. The pressure was still showing that propane was leaking, even though everything was turned off. He's not certified to go into an RV or into a house and find leaks. His job is from the propane tank to where it connects into the unit. It was awesome that he tried to see if we could fix it quickly and easily. However, it was also awesome and important for him to tap out when he couldn't find it quickly and easily. The mobile RV maintenance team came and they saw the two connections that we had fixed. They were tightened down. We did a good job. And then they found the last leak, which was a second connector up underneath the stovetop where it connected directly in. So there were two connectors for the stovetop, and we only found one of them. The good news is it was a 2-minute fix. It took them some time to locate where the leak was coming from. It took them 2 minutes to tighten it down, and it was done. I was concerned that we had punctured something or a main line had a leak in it or something else. That was not the case. It was legitimately such an easy thing to fix. That sucks because it costs $125 to have them do that. What's great is that we had the peace of mind that it was fixed. How you check the propane system is called a water column gauge. The mobile RV team, Matt and crew, hooked that up once they stopped the leak, and they let that run for 15 minutes to make sure that there's no change in pressure and that nothing is leaking in the entire RV line. It was great because they could connect it at the main source. The gauge was checking every single line within the RV all simultaneously. That may not be a surprise to you, but because I've never experienced it before, you don't know what you don't know, and now I do. They ran it for 15 minutes. It was perfect. The gauge level read 11, which is pretty much where they want it at. So they knew all the leaks were gone within the RV. Two side notes with this. The connection that they ended up finding and fixing should have an elbow joint on it. What happens is the hose comes up to connect. However, it's kinked a little bit to make it so that the propane flows perfectly and the area where the kink is doesn't wear out faster. They want to come back and put an L bracket on that. It's something that doesn't have to be done, but would be good to get done. And here's the good and bad news. They do need to come back. The propane detector that went off like crazy when I turned on the furnace, which I'm very thankful for, works fine. However, it's 20 years old and they should be replaced every 5 years. It's $100 for the actual unit. It's $125 for the labor. The good news is this was not part of the renovation necessarily. That's not something that they needed to upgrade when we did the renovation. It's also not something we were aware of and even knew to ask for. So I'm really grateful that we are getting that replaced. When they replace that, and because they need to come and do that, they're going to put the elbow bracket on, and that won't cost us anything additional. The next thing I had to do was contact Hunt's Propane so that they would come and hook up the 120-gallon tank to the RV. There shouldn't be any problem with that. That's the only thing that needs to get done to make it so that all the electrical and all the propane is as wrapped up as it can be at this point. So that is very exciting. The final things that we have to do, we need to level the RV. And I do need to polyurethane one butcher block countertop. The plan is that we'll go up, we'll level it, we'll polyurethane the butcher block counter, and then the RV is completely ready to be moved into. The other thing that we need to do is we still need to give our 30-day notice of house we're renting and rent the storage unit. So that should be in the next video. Until next time, thank you for watching this crazy adventure. Have an amazing day.